statements, 2-minute opening statements, and we'll start with Mr. Alessi.
Oh, thank you very much. And I want to thank the Montclair.
You want to use
oh,
the
okay.
microphone, and you probably have to call the us. And I don't know if you saw, but we're keeping time over here.
Oh, okay. Okay, and this is 2 minutes?
2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay. I can talk fast. Okay. First of all, I want to thank the Progress and the Montclair League of Women Voters for this very important debate, which is the crux of our American democracy. I moved into North Caldwell in 1988 with my wife, Diane, of 37 years, and our 2 daughters, Dina and Marietta. I had never heard of North Caldwell, although a few years before I did a mock trial as a prosecutor and Bar Association trustee. So that's the only time I've been there. But then 4 years later, we were lucky enough to find North Caldwell. Both of my daughters attended the local schools. They got excellent educations from kindergarten through 12. And that education that they received launched them into 2 very successful careers. The 4 of us enjoyed our time in North Caldwell. Its many activities, great management. Its beautiful bucolic oasis filled with great neighbors. There have been many changes, and my goal has always been for the town to maintain the character and quality of life that most people came here for. I want to give back to the community because my family and I have received so much from North Caldwell. I've always been involved in public service, including Essex County Prosecutor's Office, both state and Essex County Bar Association's Head Start, and I'm the board of many charitable organizations. This is something that I firmly believe in, and I have main issues that I want to deal with: safety, fiscal responsibility, transparency, and certainly the limiting of development in our bucolic oasis. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Raymond.
Good evening. I want to thank the Progress and the League of Women Voters for organizing this wonderful event tonight. It's great that we have a fully contested election in North Caldwell, the first time in many, many years that the residents of North Caldwell have a decision to make. My wife and I moved to North Caldwell 13 years ago. We're the proud parents of Max and Haley. They are both at West Essex High School. One is a junior, one is a freshman. They are both on the marching band drum line, so yes, it's very loud in our household. The Raymond team, Art, Steve, and I have spent a lot of time over the last several months getting to know our neighbors, knocking on doors. We've been asking our neighbors what is their concerns. They've told us that they're concerned about a lot of the same things: development, drainage, taxes, services, security. We've been listening to those concerns. We are tired of hearing about these issues being discussed by the mayor and council for years, over year, over year. The Raymond team is about prioritizing, planning, and acting. We are going to be fiscally responsible to address the tax issues. We're going to make sure that we continue to provide robust services while remaining fiscally responsible. I am proud of the Raymond team. Art, Steve, and I have a collective background in law, finance, and in construction. And these are the skills and these are the experiences that are necessary to lead North Caldwell in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll start with our first question. For Mr. Raymond, how do you respond to voters who ask why you're running for mayor as a Democrat after serving on the council as a Republican? And actually, for both candidates, does an official's political party matter at the municipal level? We'll start with Mr. Raymond.
When I moved to town 13 years ago, Mayor Alessi approached me me and asked me if I wanted to get involved in local politics. I said yes. I wanted to be able to give back to the community. Said, you have to register as a Republican. Only Republicans 13 years ago were running and holding office in town. So I registered as a Republican. Nobody asked me my political views 13 years ago. I'm running as a Democrat now because the Republican Party in town decided that after 14 years as mayor, Joe Alessi was going to be the Republican Party's candidate for another 4-year term. In the past 13 years, the political climate in our country and in our town has changed. My political views are more aligned with the Democratic Party, and that's why I'm running on the Democratic line with Art and Steve. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leslie.
I've known Josh for many years. We both went to Montclair Academy. I was on my job as a trustee. I was the one that coached the team. Josh has said himself that the reason he became a lawyer was because of my mentoring. I don't really believe that because I know he had a grandfather that was an excellent lawyer. So I might have played a small part in that. He graduated from law school. He was looking for a job, and I wrote a letter to, at the time, a very good friend of mine, Richard Train. I'm not saying that's the reason he got the job. I sent it to Richard, who was the senior partner, and Josh got the job. I convinced him not to move to Livingston, but to move to North Caldwell. I put him in 2 years on the zoning board. We never, ever discussed what political party you were with. Absolutely not. So.
Thank you. Would either of you like to rebut him, Mr. Raymond?
I would just like to say that I'm thankful for the time that Mayor Alessi is not only dedicated to this town, but when he did serve as a alumnus and a trustee at MKA and gave back to our school and was my mock trial coach. And while he was one mentor, I will also say, and hopefully my mom won't break into too much tears, the other mentor in my life was my grandfather, who I unfortunately never got to meet, Harry S. LaBeouf. I'm carrying with me today his money clip, as I do on all important occasions in my life.
Mr. Leslie?
Certainly, and it was very gratifying that Josh would say that I was his mentor to be a lawyer. I mean, it was very, very nice. We were very close friends, but obviously it was his grandfather. After I put him on the zoning board, there was an opening on the council. He was there. He, no election. It was an election in 2014, got election, that I believe, with our no opposition, and once again in 2016, and he won no opposition then.
Thank you. Moving on. What have you learned from the Pulte development of homes on Hilltop Drive that you would bring to the borough's dealings with the developer of Greenbrook Country Club if that property is developed? What would you do differently? And we'll start with Mr. Alessi.
There were issues with Pulte. Pulte was not the most honorable corporation to deal with. We had developed a developer settlement agreement, which I believe that Josh signed off on. We had an arbitration by Chief Justice Jimmy Zizali, where we went over all these particular issues. We made sure that the original settlement agreement, which demanded that Pulte take care of any water problems that they had, demanded that, and this was a sticking point, and I know Josh and Judge Santamoro were very strong on this, that Pulte had to be responsible for arbitration, and therefore, if there were any claims, Pulte would pay for the arbitration and pay the claims. And I think two people took advantage of that.
Thank you. Mr. Raymond.
The lessons that we've learned from the Pulte development are that we can't be reactive, we have to be proactive. We don't need to address what Pulte did wrong after a major flood and storm that that took place. I believe it was on August 14th of 2018, and I know that date because it was my wife's birthday.
The 11th, I was there pulling sandbags for,
Let him finish his
all right.
That being said, we were about to celebrate my wife's birthday, and even though I don't live anywhere near Ferndale, we had flooding in our basement, as many people in town did. The point is we need to be proactive. We need to plan ahead, and we need to foresee when we have development that is going to inevitably come to our town, what are going to be the ramifications of that development, and not react after the fact to their faulty plans and their faulty designs. We need to make sure ahead of time that the plans are not going to cause flooding downstream.
Thank you. Any rebuttals?
Yes, we negotiated with them, and we had a settlement agreement which indicated that
Mike.
Oh, had that Italian intercom with them. We negotiated a settlement agreement, which among other things, if there was any issues with water, they were going to hold us harmless, and it would not cost us anything. Josh was was Judge Santamoro, myself, Josh, and Mr. Mankin, who was a insurance attorney, and our beloved David Paris. We were there several times, going back and forth, and that settlement agreement was signed by all the council people that were there, and we fought for arbitration, that people could go, and if they had issues, they would pay, Postal would pay for the arbitration and help them with the expense. I don't believe more than 2 people did that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Raymond. Okay. Moving on. To Mr. Raymond, if elected mayor, would you have to recuse yourself regarding possible development of the Greenbrook Country Club because of a conflict of interest related to the club's owner, Woodmont Properties? And to Mayor Alessi, have you recused yourself on borough matters because of a conflict of interest? We'll start with Mr. Raymond.
No, I would not have to recuse myself. The conflict that I had several years ago is no longer a conflict. The conflict was because one of my partners at the time was representing Woodmont Properties in other matters. I did not represent Woodmont Properties. I do not represent Woodmont Properties. My current firm does not represent Woodmont Properties. I will not have to recuse myself. There is no conflict.
Thank you. Mr. Alessi, have you ever had to recuse yourself on borough matters?
Yes, my cousin, Anthony Marino, was the person in his group that built the Highlands that were part of the Hilltop, and they were across the street in Verona. I clearly did not get involved with anything while he was building them. Anthony and I had a great relationship. He was my godfather, I was his son's godfather, and our daughter was baptized by his wife. So there was no way I was going to break that relationship up. I knew what my duty was, and you'll see it in several instances. I recused myself because I knew I had to.
Thank you. Any rebuttals?
No.
If elected or re-elected, what would you do to protect North Caldwell from additional development? Can you point to examples in your prior service on the council or as mayor where you did that? We'll start with Mr. Alessi.
Well, one of the good pieces of news is that, thankfully, there is not a lot, to my knowledge, of open spaces that can be developed. But I would like to talk directly with the 800-pound gorilla in the room, which is Greenbrook Country Club. Greenbrook Country Club was purchased by a predecessor of Woodmont. It was secret. I'm saying secret. Nobody knew about it. We were just ready to get our fair share housing approval, which is what people have to do to compile with COA. At that time, we had to start from square one and go through the whole thing. But there was a signed agreement. If we tried to break that agreement, it would have been tortious interference, a lawsuit that we wouldn't have been able to win, and developers' remedies were the they take out the zoning laws and there could be a lot of property.
Thank you. Mr. Raymond?
Due to the conflict of interest that I had at the time, I did not vote on the agreement with Greenbrook Country Club and their owners. I do believe that the town knew that Greenbrook Country Club was up for sale. In fact, I'm quite confident that the mayor and I had conversations about reaching out to Joe DiVincenzo and seeing if the town, the Board of Ed, and the county could somehow join forces and purchase the country club. A similar transaction took place in West Orange when the county and the Township of West Orange bought Rock Spring Country Club. We need to do whatever we can to limit development in this town. We need to make sure that we limit the impact of development that is eventually going to happen at Greenbrook Country Club. Fortunately, it's my understanding that the owners of Greenbrook Country Club have come back to the town to possibly renegotiate the deal. This may be an excellent opportunity for us to get the proper counsel, redevelopment counsel, so that we can seek community benefits from such redevelopment.
Thank you. Mr. Roberto?
Yes, the Greenbrook deal was it's an ice cream. The Greenbrook deal was set in stone. We found out about it 2 weeks before we were going to have our fair share housing to get a judgment of repose, which means that we were protected. When we found out about it, everything had to be delayed. If we knew about it ahead of time, we certainly wouldn't have gone ahead with it. And as far as purchasing it, I believe they wanted $35 million because they wanted the money they bought it for, the money they put in, and the money that would have been their profit. We couldn't have afforded it, and who in this town knows how to run a country club?
Thank you. Mr. Raymond, do you want to say anything?
Well, we certainly could have hired management to run the country club as they're doing in West Orange. I don't think the purchase price was anywhere near $30 million. And even if it was, the development of that property will put more pressure and stress on our school system, which will cause our school system to have to renovate their buildings in excess of $30 million. They're already anticipating raising, having to expand the schools. Certainly doing whatever we could have to limit the further development in this town would have put less pressure on our schools and less costs on having to renovate the schools. So it would have been a win-win.
Thank you. Moving on. Mayor Leslie, there have been no planned activities for Walker's Pond until very recently. And after years of prodding, a crosswalk finally has been started on White Rock Road. Why was there no action until just before the election? To Mr. Raymond, what do you want to see done with the Walker's Pond property? We'll start with Mayor Leslie.
There's something, thank you. There is something that is called the DEP, which as far as I'm concerned, has got to be part of the Kremlin. They are a very strict regulating agency in New Jersey. In order to get permits, it's like the land that time forgot. Plus the fact there was a period of time when there was COVID. We had to get the plans for drainage. That has been accomplished. We need them now to do the walking paths because this is all seriatim. And as far as the house, which I had over, my line's over my dead body, they're gonna knock that house down, it's beautiful. If we couldn't build a parking lot, and we cannot now, what would the use of developing that, and it couldn't be open to the public?
Thank you. Mr. Raymond?
This is the problem. There's no forward thinking. There is no plan. We're still talking about what we aren't going to do with the building. We're still waiting for DEP approval for a walking path. Yet miraculously, 3 years ago, before a contested election, they dredged the pond after having bought the property 6 years ago. Now, 2 weeks before yet another contested election, without DEP permits evidently, we're going to have our first annual Walker's Fall Festival. This is wonderful. We should have had 6 of these festivals already. Next year, I hope to be mayor and welcome everybody to the 2nd annual Walker's Fall Festival.
Thank you. Mr. Leslie?
We had always planned to have an event for every season. we were told that this particular time was the height of the fall foliage. To have a party and bring children to enjoy themselves, I don't think is political. I think it's one of the things that makes North Caldwell the great place that it is. And we're planning to do in the winter ice skating. In the summer, that pond has been used a lot. If you see the Boy Scouts and other people, they are using that all the time. And in the summer, some kind of a stage production.
Thank you. Moving on. What is your plan for keeping taxes stable in light of growing costs and the need for upgrades of municipal buildings? Mr. Lesson.
Keeping taxes, I'll get it again. Keeping taxes stable is a function of, I have always went by, if you're having a problem, you're going to either raise taxes, take away services, or create more revenue. We have certainly not taken away services, because that's what everybody in this town expects and has been living with for many, many, many years. We do not want to raise taxes. Well, what we have done is sought to gain revenue. Within a week, well, shortly after I became mayor, we had outsourced animal control. It was costing us $16,000 a year. I said, thank you, but no thank you. And we were able to do it in-house. Through that period of time, the town saved $100,000, and now we are charging fees for those animals to be removed. There are, and eventually with Walker's Ponds, there's going to be revenue that is going to be taken from there. It's my goal to try to raise as much revenue as we can.
Thank you. Mr. Raymond.
We need to reach out to other sources to bring revenue back into our wonderful municipality. There are avenues through federal, state, and county dollars that should be coming back into our borough to support infrastructure improvements in our town, as we've seen in many of our neighboring communities. The mayor talks about wanting to maintain stable taxes. However, we know at least 3 times out of the last 4 years, the tax rate in our town has gone up. We need to do everything we can to maintain our taxes. Nobody wants our taxes to go up. Art, Steve, and I live in this town too. We don't want to pay more in taxes, but we will do everything we can to maintain a fiscally responsible budget without affecting the services.
Thank you. Any rebuttal?
Yes. The tax increases, or lack thereof, from 2019 well, maybe we'll start at 2020. That was before we had Democrat representation on the council. For whatever reason, Mr. Reese at the time called himself a Republican, always voted with the 2 Democrats, and then there was another person who is another solid Republican, has always voted with the Democrats. It was just Mr. Tilton and Mr. Kessler that had the voice of reason. I couldn't do anything because I was the only one that could break a tie. If you will see the middle, I'm sorry, there were 5 years that there was no taxes, and the other years were minimal until noon.
I would just like 1 second to rebut.
Sure.
The mayor taught me when I came onto the council, the first thing you need to know is how to count. There's 6 council members. In order to pass the budget, you need 4 votes. He seems to want to blame 2 Democratic council members for the passing of a budget by at least 4 council members.
I will tell you.
Now, that's one round of applause. Okay, moving on. What is your assessment of how North Caldwell handled its most recent obligation to provide affordable housing under the Mayoral ruling? What would you do differently to handle the next round after 2025? Mr. Raymond.
the state mandate for affordable housing is required by our municipality, as it is with other municipalities throughout the state. We have done a good job of meeting those obligations. The Greenbrook Country Club includes a portion of its development to satisfy that obligation. And again, we will have to make sure that when that development is ultimately built, that the improvements to the community are keeping with the character of our community.
As of now, we have a judgment of repose that will go through July the 2nd of 2025. So during this period of time, we have complied with the COA obligation. So they will look at them in 2025, which is 3 years from now, but right now, we are in excellent shape, unless somebody else finds land. We don't know.
Rebuttals? No? Okay. Final question before we move on to closing statements. Mr. Leslie, you said this will be your last term if elected. Will you commit to serving out the full term? And the same question to Mr. Raymond. We'll start with Mr. Raymond.
I don't know how that question is really applicable to me, other than that I'm looking forward to serving one term, and I'll worry about if I'm going to serve another after that. I will commit to serving the full term.
Okay. Mr. Leslie.
I made that statement in the beginning. And who knows what's going to happen in 4 years, but I have received so much good wishes from people in this town. Joe, we moved here because what a great job you're doing. I don't understand what the subterfuge is. That's from the new people in town. People that have lived in town for a long time have said you're doing a great job. Perfect example, I had my first race, which was acrimonious, nowhere near this. But I ran against by somebody by the name of Ed Nugent. His wife, Jane, called me up like, I don't know, 3 months ago. And she said, Joe, you are doing such a good job. You should be mayor for life. I said, no, thank you. But I really feel that I've made a difference, and people have, told me that, and it gives me, makes me feel ebullient.
Thank you. I don't think you need any further comments. Good. Let's move on to closing statements then. 2 minutes. Mr. Raymond.
Thank you. Again, thank you to the Progress and the League of Women Voters. Thank you for all of you coming out tonight. This has been a wonderful evening filled with a lot of information provided by the candidates for the Board of Ed, the Town Council, and from your mayoral candidates. While we've been working on this campaign, I was over at a friend's house and they had a sign above their door, the family rules. Some of the rules were never give up, play nicely with others, love, listen, learn, and laugh. The Raymond team has been working very hard. Along the way, we have shown that we love and care deeply about this community. Art, Steve, and I equally. We've been listening to our residents, we've been listening to our friends and our neighbors, and we have been learning about what their concerns are and what they expect out of their leaders. As it so happens, we've happened to have had a few laughs as well. We're enjoying ourselves, and we look forward to serving the residents of North Caldwell.
Thank you. Mr. Leslie.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
This is your closing.
Yeah, oh, okay, I'm sorry. Thank you. I find this, what Mr. Raymond had said, a little bit disingenuous. He was a Republican, not because I forced him to be a Republican. He got on the council in 2013. He ran in 2014, no opposition, with Art. They ran again in 2016 as loyal Republicans. The top of that ticket was Mr. MAGA himself, Donald J. Trump. They were totally content with running on that ticket. And what I'm saying is, I think that needs to be brought out to show the character of what's happening. And I still say that there are a lot of people that love the way the town that this is being run. That's why they moved here, and that's why they're staying here, whether they've been here for a long period of time or a short period of time.
Thank you. Then that's it. Thank you.